So as I've spoken on this program many, many times, Chris McDaniel is a fine individual. I've spent time with him off the air. We've had lengthy discussions about the Constitution and government. And I was excited when he ran for Senate out of the state of Mississippi, only to be burned, not by the Democrats, but by the Republicans. It was the Republican leadership that sought to accuse Chris McDaniel of having ties to the KKK, literally the worst thing that can happen to anyone, but especially a Southern conservative. Joining us on the program right now is Chris McDaniel. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Andrew, man, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
You had a run-in with someone from Facebook not too long ago. Is that true?
It probably happens a lot. Yeah, I'm an outspoken conservative, so obviously there's going to be some disagreements on Facebook from time to time.
But didn't somebody actually spend money to try to keep you out of the race?
Oh, goodness. There's been money spent from all sectors, it seems, trying to keep me out of this race. Bear in mind that whether it's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce or whether it's the establishment in D.C. or whether it's now Sean Parker from Facebook, all of these liberal entities are converging on Mississippi to try to stop our state from sending a conservative to Washington. And, it's one of those things, Andrew, we've talked about this in the past. If you can't find a conservative in Mississippi, where are you going to find a conservative? I mean, it's not like the cavalry's coming from California. The cavalry's not coming from New York. We have to find these men and women in places like Mississippi. And that's why the establishment fights so hard against us. They know we're conservative. They know we'll fight for the right things.
I'm still, maybe you're over it. I still, as a Republican voter and a conservative, still do not think the people that tried to tie you to the Klan should be let off the hook. And I realize if you win a Senate seat, you're going to have to, caucus with some of these people because they're senators still. But, we expect this from the Democrats. We don't expect Republicans to ever go there.
No, it was despicable. It's one of the most despicable things that's ever happened to me. And the idea they would go to that length to keep me out of the Senate was really eye-opening because we always knew that we were the conservative in the race. I understood that they would fight for Senator Cochran and fight to keep their gravy train moving. And that's what they did. But, man, you're right. The idea they would call me a racist, which is one of the worst things a human can be called, it was totally uncalled for. And, no, we're not completely over. And the answer for us is, and every conservative, it's time to get a big win in Mississippi. It's time to put the establishment back in their place. Tell them that we're tired of being betrayed. We're tired of playing their games. And we want new leadership in Washington, D.C.
It's amazing that you have so many Republicans that run as conservatives, and as soon as they get to Washington, they start making apologies for being conservatives. They say, well, this is settled law, or we're not discussing that right now. They get to Washington and they constitute themselves as the Republican wing of the Democrat Party. They rarely ever push back. They rarely ever make the case. I mean, some of them have spent so much of their energy trying to oppose Donald Trump. They like the bad trade deals. They don't disagree with the open border. They've shrugged their shoulders. I mean, they promised to repeal Obamacare. They've done no such thing. We absolutely, positively, and you're right, it's Mississippi. If we can't get conservatives into the Senate from Mississippi, we've got a problem.
Yeah, Andrew, what it boils down to is they're cowards. Our party has been infiltrated by cowards. Our party has been infiltrated by former Democrats who may have changed the letter at the end of their name, but they didn't change their governing philosophy. And so the bottom line is they want to protect the establishment. They want to protect the status quo. They want to make sure they keep getting rich, their friends keep getting rich, their buddies keep getting the contracts, and so on and so forth. We're here to break that cartel up. We're here to actually elect conservatives, not to be ashamed about being conservative, but to fight. And that's one of the things we've been so disappointed about with Mitch McConnell's leadership. He doesn't allow conservatives to fight. He doesn't force the votes. He doesn't give us our debate on the floor. People like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, they deserve a voice. And if we're not extending that voice, if we're not articulating the conservative message, our kids, our grandkids, nobody's ever going to hear it. So look, we're at a pivotal time. And if we don't have fighters in Washington the status quo prevails. Government keeps growing. The debt keeps growing. Civil liberties keep disappearing. All we're asking people to do is to fight, to stand our ground one last time, to push back and regain some of this ground we've lost over the years.
Now, while I got you here, let's talk about some of the things that are going on right now. The Democrats are running with this narrative. The media is running with the narrative that Trump, he obviously worked with the Russians to win the election. No such evidence has come out. Really, the hard-charging defense is coming from the House. Very little from the Senate. Where are you?
Well, it's a funny thing. You know, the Democrats seem to believe that 12 Russians somehow can influence an entire election, but millions of illegal immigrants can't. And it's just all insider baseball. At the end of the day, Donald Trump won.
I want that tweeted out by everyone, by the way. You heard what Chris McDaniel just said, that according to the Democrats and the media, 12 Russians can affect the election, but millions of illegal immigrants can't. Put that out there on Facebook. Keep going.
Absolutely. And so we find ourselves in a position, we get caught up in these soap operas. But at the end of the day, if you have fighters, dismiss the narrative, charge the field of battle, make a difference for conservatives, and quit playing Mitch McConnell's game. We're just tired of it. I'm tired of the press. I'm tired of watching the narrative from D.C. I'm tired of watching the soap opera. Look, we need the Barry Goldwater types back. We need the Taufts back. We need the Reagans back in our party. And so far, those boys, the voices have been silent for many years.
1-866-95 Patriot 957-2874. Chris McDaniel's joining us. McDaniel2018.com. I hope this is the time. Because again, you know, the Republicans, it wasn't the Democrats that came after you, it was the Republicans. And very few senators are backing up Trump. It sounds like they are giving more license to people like Chuck Schumer to actually promote this idea that, as you said, the open borders will have no effect on our governance, on our society, on anything. But 12 Russians, they ran the election. And you know what's amazing is nobody is actually saying, well, when did that happen? Under whose watch did that happen? Did it happen under Republican watch, Democrat watch, Trump's watch, Obama's watch?
Well, it's pretty clear the Democrats don't mind playing games with foreign entities when it comes to the donor class, enriching themselves. And that's part of the problem in D.C. right now. The donor class controls the politicians. Whoever can raise the most campaign finance cash always seems to be successful. So the politicians are basically just puppets at this stage. They're being controlled by major donors, major corporations, and others that can put the money in their coffers so they can get reelected. And so that's one of the reasons you don't see pushback in the Senate when Trump's being attacked, because most of the senators are beholden to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce wants amnesty. They want open borders. They want Common Core, and they want more corporate subsidies. So naturally, the senators are going to be very careful not to upset their masters, which so happens to be their donors. It's just time to push back. Our Constitution matters. The laws matter. Our American values and traditions, they matter. And at some point, Andrew, and you do this every day, you just got to stick your chin out there. You got to be a strong person and push back against the system. And that's what we're trying to do.
You know, it's amazing. We were talking earlier, and Mississippi has its cities, but it's largely a rural state. And what's amazing about the way progressives look at a state like Mississippi or any other state where there's large, rural areas is they don't understand why they can't make progressivism work there. And that's because when people live on top of one another, there's a different set of rules. It's true. That doesn't free cities to, just ignore the Constitution. But when you have people literally living on top of each other, you're likely to have more government. Your interactions with the government are going to be plenty, not few. Even the way you approach law enforcement, right? I mean, if you live in a rural part of Mississippi, you could turn the radio up as loud as you damn well please. If you live in a major metropolitan city, I mean, you're going to have people, kicking the walls or stomping on the floor to tell you to turn it down. And the progressives it seems like the more they lose the South and the Midwest, the more that they realize that they can't win there anymore, the more further left they keep going.
Well, you're exactly right. And Reagan had it right so many years ago. He said there's not a right versus a left. It's either up or down, up toward liberty or down toward tyranny. And right now we see the progressives and a lot of Republicans in this country going down toward tyranny. More laws, more regulations, more control. The people of Mississippi are sick of being controlled. We're sick of the laws. We're sick of the regulations. We want to be free. We want to be left alone. That's the American dream. And to your earlier point, it was Jefferson that said so many years ago, whenever you have these cities that become so enlarged and the people are so focused on these services in these cities, they'll become just as corrupt as the cities in Europe did. And that's what we're seeing. The cities have become corrupt. They've become progressive. They've become centralized. And the concept of our government is to decentralize those powers, bring those powers back to the people, back to the states. But more importantly, just let Washington leave us alone for a change. Just leave us be.
Now, I've again, back to, what the Republicans did to you against Thad Cochran.
Yeah.
When you talk about these things, the immediate reaction is, well, if we left you people to yourselves in Mississippi, you'd all be a bunch of backwoods racists. Now, nobody is going to stand up and say there's no such thing as a racist here or there. There are people with racist views everywhere. But you have pushed back so hard on these accusations, because I've gotten to know you, and we've spoken about this off the air, that it is something that broke your heart when this happened. The worst thing in the world for a Southern conservative is to constantly be linked to racism, especially when not a single shred of evidence. There's nothing there.
No, I've spent my entire life. I had a father before I lost him a few years ago, and he was a professor. The idea was to treat every human being with dignity. That they're self-governing, that their autonomy has to count, their dignity has to count. And I treat everyone that way, I always have. And my friends would tell you that. The people that know me best would tell you that. So to be accused of that horrible thing of racism, that crime of racism, and to have to live with that, it's terrible, it's tragic. And I tell you this, Mississippi has come a long way, and we're proud of that. And we're proud of the fact that we've moved forward over the years. But yes, racism exists. If you believe otherwise, just go to Boston for a couple of days. You'll see it in Boston. You'll see it in New York. You'll see it in Philadelphia. But we've moved, I think, more aggressively and better than most states South and city Souths, because we are inherently good people in the South. And so to be accused of that mess really broke my heart. And, I just have to say to all my friends out there, you know who I am, and you know what I believe, and I am absolutely not a racist. Never have been, never will be.
The fact that we're even still talking about this is pathetic, but I know that this is probably going to come back because, the Republicans, some people saw that it worked the first time, even though it was a absolutely bottom of the barrel, disgusting, despicable thing to do to you. But, if it worked once, some people will think it will work again. All right, I got to leave it there. I'm coming up with my top of the hour music. Chris McDaniel, we'll be talking a lot between now and November. McDaniel2018.com is the website. Like I said, I've known Chris for some years now. We've spoken off the air many times, and he is a rock solid conservative. Chris, thanks for coming back on the program.
Thank you, sir. It means a lot to me. Take care.
All right.